Welcome to Watch, Review, Repeat. This is the podcast where two best friends discuss the latest in film and television and then do it all over again the following episode. My name is Colton Brown. Joining me is Andrew Meadows.
A truly bonus episode. We haven't done one of these in a long time.
No, it's an impromptu bonus episode under the circumstances, the tragic circumstances, unfortunately. And we're going to have some company for this bonus episode. So welcome back to the show, I believe actually for the third consecutive episode, Anna Mattis.
Oh, good God, I'm so sorry.
Becoming a regular.
Y'all must be sick of me.
No. Not at all. We're happy to have some extra company to talk about. We're going to talk about a lot of things on this episode. First and foremost, we're framing it as a Studio 666 episode. It's up on video on demand now. It came out in theaters, I think a couple months back, either late January, early February, something like that. We all watched it very recently at home from the comfort of our own living rooms, and we're just going to talk about the movie, and we're going to talk about Foo Fighters. We're going to celebrate Foo Fighters, and perhaps most importantly, we're going to celebrate the life of Foo Fighters' longtime drummer Taylor Hawkins, who passed away. I guess it's probably been a couple weeks now, at age 50. So those are the kind of things that we're going to talk about. I think we're not going to treat it as a regular episode where we would usually do a laundry list of news and everything and cover the movie. Like, it's going to be pretty free form. I think talking about all aspects of Foo, talking about Taylor's legacy and kind of the impact it seems like he's had on the rock and roll community, the music community in general, even more so. So yeah. I think it'll be good. Maybe cathartic for all of us to kind of talk about the movie, Foo Fighters, anything that comes with that territory. So I think maybe you guys can help pull me in the right direction. Should we talk about Foo Fighters right up front? Should we talk about them a little bit? Do you want to talk about Taylor right up front? How do you guys want to do this?
I mean, I think we can start with kind of background and then talk about Taylor and then kind of get into the film. I think we're also going to talk a little bit about Back and Forth.
That's true. Yes.
The documentary.
Yeah, we'll also talk about Back and Forth, the documentary. I'm not sure if Andrew ended up watching it. I did recommend it.
I did not.
But I wasn't sure. I didn't think so. It's good.
Point.
Maybe we'll be able to convince you when we talk about it. But Anna and I watched it. That was actually something we watched before we jumped into Studio 666. And I think as we'll talk about, Studio 666 feels like a really natural evolution of kind of what the band does, in terms of having fun and stuff.
Picking a house to record an album.
Yeah, pretty much. So Foo Fighters, they were formed in 1994 by Dave Grohl, and to be fair, this is all territory that's covered in the documentary. So some of it's obviously just recounting the history of it with some really good insight from the band members themselves. But Dave Grohl, he was, for most people, the drummer of Nirvana, for the last couple albums that they did, Nevermind and Utero. And basically, obviously, Nirvana met its own tragic end when Kurt Cobain took his own life. And so basically, Dave Grohl, he's a musician at heart, and his response, I think he took like a year off, didn't pick up any instruments basically after Kurt's death. But eventually, I think he felt compelled to, channel his own musicianship into making music, into making new songs. So out of that was born the first Foo Fighters record. Which was all him, appropriately called Foo Fighters. All him. He recorded every single instrument on it, except I think there's a guitar solo. I think that's not him. So it's fully him. And then from that point on, then he starts bringing in band members. He brings in Nate Mendel, who's the bassist, has been the bassist for the entire tenure of Foo Fighters.
Nate,
yeah, and for anyone that's seen Studio 666, you've seen obviously older versions of most of these people that I'm going to talk about. Not the next guy. William Goldsmith was the original drummer, besides Dave, obviously, for a hot minute there. basically right up until the recording, or perhaps somewhat through the recording of their second album, The Color and the Shape. And then Pat Smear, who had actually joined Nirvana as their second guitarist, as the fourth member of Nirvana, he also joined Foo Fighters as part of their live band, and then became a long-term member of the band, who had a brief period of not being with the band and then coming back and stuff. But he's been with them for a while now again. So that's kind of, the early, I guess, beginnings of Foo Fighters, right? It's fucking rock and roll. It's like pure unadulterated rock and roll. Like it's good stuff. I mean, it's born out of this post grunge thing where Nirvana is very, very grungy. Foo Fighters is not. Foo Fighters is like, it's like roaring guitars, and Dave Grohl. When Dave Grohl picks up, some drumsticks, the man doesn't know how to hit softly. I think we were watching in the Back and Forth documentary, like, they did the Unplugged thing, and like, to me, it looked like he was straining himself to not just be smashing the shit out of things. But even when he's like playing a guitar, it's just, it's
literally
loud.
Animal.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, pretty. Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah.
Classic. Well, isn't it in Muppets Christmas Carol, where he's just supposed to be like hitting the cymbal lightly, and he lasts about 3 hits, and then just goes crazy, and that's Dave Grohl.
Basically, that's basically him. But eventually the band kind of takes shape beyond that, where he does the drums himself on the second record. That causes some issues for the band. And so they lose the drummer at that point, and then after that album comes out, they got to find a drummer for the tour, and in comes Taylor Hawkins, who at the time was the drummer for Alanis Morissette, and had a pretty good reputation, it sounded like, in the business.
Yeah, they thought they wouldn't be able to get him because he, was drumming for the biggest, one of the biggest acts in the world at the time. So, but he was gung-ho about it. He was, totally hyped to join Foo Fighters.
Yeah, and then he, at that point, becomes the permanent drummer of Foo Fighters. He basically, took the reins and embraced them. And I think that, there wasn't a moment where Dave thought to himself, shit, I think I need to re-record this guy. He really became an essential
part of the team,
element of the band, of the kind of the creativity and the driving force behind the music.
He's probably the only person in the world that, Dave Grohl could look at and not think, I could do it better myself.
Yeah, yeah. So I think they those two particularly formed a really, really, I think, great camaraderie, and they, I mean, at this point, I'm just summarizing the documentary more or less, but anyway.
What does gears a little, maybe?
What does Foo mean to you?
Like, what does the band mean to me?
Yeah, right? Like, I mean, are you all about them? I mean,
I'm all about them. I am all about them. I've been all about Foo Fighters, I think, maybe not literally as long as I can remember. That's not totally true. I wasn't raised on Foo Fighters, if that makes sense. My parents didn't listen to Foo Fighters. I didn't, find out about Foo Fighters through my parents or through my childhood. I probably found out about Foo Fighters by listening to the radio, like 97X or 98 Rock, that sort of thing. That's how I probably got introduced to Foo Fighters. But I remember, probably like the first album in which or probably the first song I might even remember is like All My Life. That might be like kind of like that's probably around the time that
that's a good one.
I feel like I'm like hearing Foo Fighters on the radio, because I'm probably 7, 8 at that point. Maybe that's a little early, but I feel like that song had a lot of staying power. Obviously, it still does to this point. No, I'm sorry. That was 2002 that one came out. So that makes perfect sense. I'm like 10 years old at that point. That 9, 10, that feels like the right kind of sweet spot where I'm like figuring out like some musical taste and hearing shit that's not country, blaring out of my parents' stereo or anything like that.
Pink Floyd.
I don't know if they were playing much Pink Floyd then either, to be honest.
Really, that's a new development?
No, I don't know if it's a new development. I just feel like I wasn't raised on Pink Floyd either, even though they listen to Pink Floyd now. But then, as we grew up, In Your Honor's a big one too. The best of you, and all that. Is classic. And I think as I got older, like 2011's Wasting Light is like, that's probably like, that's probably when I become like the biggest Foo fan. Like that's when I like really am not listening to just the singles and stuff like that off the radio. That's when I'm listening to a full album, taking it all in, going back and listening to the old shit too, and beyond the singles, right? Listening to more than just My Hero and Everlong and all that. Like that's when I'm all in. And so basically at that point on, from Wasting Light on, 2011 on, for the last decade, I've listened to Foo Fighters every time they put out a new record. And so I would say that I've been
You're a big Foo guy.
fan of Foo Fighters for really the last decade, while having enjoyed them for as long as I can probably remember caring about this sort of music, caring about rock and roll. You know what I mean? And
right.
Like, when I'm like 12, 13, I was fucking into Slipknot and shit. And, so I was into like metal, and stuff, but Foo Fighters were still always cool. You know what I mean? Like, and there's absolutely like shit that I listened to at that time that like I wouldn't listen. Like I listened to a lot of Disturbed back then. I don't listen to Disturbed anymore. I think Dave Draymond's a fuckhead, first of all, but the music just doesn't really do anything for me anymore. Whereas I think Foo Fighters have had a lot of staying power. Not obviously. I mean, obviously,
it's also just
commercially,
a broader taste, a broader audience.
Yeah, for sure. And so anyway, that's kind of Foo to me, I guess, in a nutshell. How about you guys?
I mean, I think obviously not as much of a fan as you. I was probably more along the lines of radio, through middle school and high school, just what I heard on the radio, and then I think college is when I started listening more. And I think part of that for me is just the kind of broad access to Spotify. In part, I think it just made it a lot easier for me to like branch out from the radio. I feel like my first, not awareness, but like awareness of like the band as a personality and not just their music was probably about, I'm trying to do the math on this. I have to ask Emily when she moved apartments, but just I remember vividly in college once visiting a friend in Boston, and her roommate and her friend was a really, really big Foo Fighters fan. And I just remember going over there like to watch back and forth. I just have this like really vivid memory of being in their living room. I think it must have been like 2013, 2014. I'll have to ask her. But yeah, and watching it then, and I, there are a few different kind of documentaries, and I was trying to figure out if I had seen this before. And when we started watching, I was like, oh yeah, no, this is the one I've seen. So I had seen it, years and years ago. And so that's kind of when the band took on more of like a personality for me. I think when you don't really pay attention to who's in a band or like the personality of the different people, it's just the music. And so that was really for me, like, I guess the first time I watched Back and Forth when, this was not just a kind of faceless, group of musicians, and became like the actual people. And then in terms of like, albums getting released and listening to the whole thing, I really didn't do that until the last one. Just because we listened to it in the car. Yeah. On drives like up to New York and back. So I know that album really well. I'd listen to other music from various albums, but never been a big, front to back album listener of them, although now I have. And I was excited because we were planning to go to Boston Calling. We had talked about it 2 years ago when they first released the lineup, which at that point was Foo Fighters, Red Hot Chili Peppers,
and Rage Against
the Machine. Those were the original three headliners: Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And at the time, I was kind of like, I'm not going to go, because part of what I always loved about Boston Calling is the variety of music. I like that it's usually there's like a rock headliner, a pop or indie headliner and then like a rap headliner. And that's kind of nice because you get a little bit of everything. And I was like, oh, this is straight up just a rock festival, which like fine. But the only one I really care about. It's
a pretty fucking awesome concert, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I mean, at the time, I
would have been pretty stoked about that.
I would have been happy with it.
At the time, was like, I would go to Foo Fighters, but I don't care
so much
as much about the other two. And I think we had decided probably not to go because it's just, it's one of those festivals that like, unless you're going to go to all 3 days, it doesn't really make sense for how much it costs. But then when it got rescheduled and, it was for this year, that's when it became Foo Fighters, The Strokes, and Metallica.
Well, I think Rage Against the Machine was on initially, and then they later bailed. I think, but I think they were announced as coming back. I think the Strokes, or no, I think Metallica took their place.
I think you're right. I think
Chili Peppers never came back. I think that they were only on the 2020 bill, but yeah. Right. Anyway, it morphed considerably.
So we bought tickets. We were all set to go. We're still going, obviously, to Boston Calling, but we were really excited, and I think especially because we both really liked this latest album, and we're hyped to see them in May. So obviously that's like not the main point and not the most important thing, but as we'll probably discuss, it's part of a whole slew of dates that have been canceled because of Taylor's death. And I guess we should probably talk about that. But Andrew,
why don't we round out everyone's experiences with Foo? Andrew,
so
what's been like for you?
Earliest exposure to the Foo Fighters. Let me see something real quick. All My Life, was that in a video game?
I mean,
I was just gonna say, wasn't something in like Guitar Hero?
Tony Hawk.
There's definitely been a ton that have been in Guitar Hero, a ton that have been in Rock Band as well.
That's probably a big part of my exposure as a child.
And I know something off of In Your Honor was on, I think, a Madden game as well. And I mean, even something from Medicine at Midnight is in like last year's version of MLB The Show. So I think they've always had a pretty heavy presence in video games. So I'm sure that it's got to be in there somewhere,
Yes. Let's see. Here we go. Hold on a second here. Okay, so that was 2007. So I am going to say that my first exposure to the Foo Fighters is without a doubt my alarm clock.
Okay.
Oh, that's right.
So they I had, but I think when I got to middle school, I got an alarm clock that, I could set my own alarm to and set it to the radio. They got that freedom to where I can wake myself up. And I set it to 97X. And I swear to God, every day for like 3 years, I think we got up at 7, I think. 7 a.m. every morning. It was the best of you, I think is someone getting the best, the best, the best, the best, the best. And it's like, shut the fuck up, please.
Got your ass out of bed though, didn't it?
It did. And it instilled in me a really strong disliking for the fucking Foo Fighters.
Why do you just change?
You just hate Foo Fighters. Is that a plot twist on this episode? I fucking hate Foo Fighters, man.
So, as time goes on and you hear other songs, I realize
that one's pretty repetitive. We have to be honest about that.
These guys, well, it's almost you gain a different appreciation for a particular song, like when you listen to it under different, like I don't know,
duress.
Yeah, under different situations. Like that one, like the God damn it, the techno, the Daft Punk, like the Daft Punk song. Mm-hmm. Is it? Which one's? I think it's not. Is it? I know it's not Aerodynamic. What is it? I can't remember. There's a really repetitive Daft Punk song. That's what I'm getting to. And
Around the World.
Around the World. That's it. It's Around the World. Around the World.
The world. Just for like 6 straight minutes, basically.
Right. Exactly. but like at first I didn't like that song. It's like my least favorite one, and then under different you gain appreciation for it. Same thing for The Best of You. Anyways, as time goes on, you realize that these people are like they're like a rock and roll Hall of Fame band, right? Like they
literally.
Yeah.
They help
literally
define.
Last year.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, it was their first year of eligibility, and they were inducted last year.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, because they help. I mean, they define not only the genre, but they help. They carved out. That they're important for the genre during the decades that they've been performing music, right? Like you can't mention a lot of other songs or a lot of bands today without mentioning the influence that the Foo Fighters potentially had on the people making that music. Because I mean, you can just listen to them, and you can hear the similarities, you can feel the energy. Dave Grohl has changed music. He's a real important dude.
It's interesting in the in the documentary, he says something about like they were getting all these gigs, and he's like, was it that they really liked us, or it's just like they wanted to have a rock band on the list. And I think like he kind of makes it like, oh, we weren't actually that good. But to me, that's like, okay, you're first of all, when people are like, we want a rock band, you're the first one they're thinking of. And also it's because you have this broad appeal to so many people, to so many different tastes, and like,
yeah.
So it I think, in terms of for the genre, it kind of, I don't want to say brought it back mainstream, but like showed that there was, a way to make rock music that was
approachable for everybody, really.
Yes, approachable. That's the right word. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's important for people that, even people that don't really like the genre of rock, you can still appreciate the weight a band has in the genre and the influence that they have on other bands and stuff. So, I mean, it's a really cool thing. It's also a very cool thing that Dave Grohl was in Nirvana. I didn't know that for the longest time. And my mind was blown when I found that out. I think I found it out recently. And so he's just been, Dave Grohl's been around.
He's a fixture, at this point. Like,
yeah,
I think,
and all the music that I've ever like I wasn't big on Foo Fighters. I'm to this day I'm still mostly a singles guy, right? The radio songs, the singles and whatnot. Right. But and
there's a lot of them. There's enough for like 2 greatest hits worth of fucking albums right there.
It's not like there's like 4 songs, right? It's I've never listened to an album through and through. But they are there's somebody that likes the genre and appreciates the genre and the changes and things that happen. And I mean, the transition, like you brought it up, the transition from like grunge or metal and kind of like blending the two and making just like a radio friendly fucking rock band. It's cool.
Yeah.
So I think they're real important. I really like them. As a person that just appreciates the singles, I have no albums. So
yeah,
that's that.
Cool. So I mean, I'm not gonna spend the rest of this time just finishing the history of the Foo Fighters. We can again see Foo Fighters back and forth for that. But what I will say is, over time, Chris Shiflett, Rami Jaffe joined the band. They're now full-time members of the band, integral members of the band as well. And in their what are we at? Almost 3 decades. Is that kind of how long they've been around?
They're my age.
Yeah, I mean, they've put out 10 studio albums from 1994 to last year, Medicine at Midnight, 2021. Like, they've been around a long time, and they have had a lot of staying power. And I think that, there's a lot of singles that have, been out there. But I mean, they've just really owned it, I think, for that whole span of time, which is really, really impressive, to just kind of witness as a music career. I mean, most bands just don't have that sort of staying power.
No,
and
only the big ones.
And I think a lot of the success can be tracked to Dave Grohl's, musicianship and I think just his personality. He's just a very likable, cool, affable kind of guy. But I think that extends to the rest of the band as well. Taylor particularly, sure. I think really took on a huge role as kind of, a major source of how the band, played music and like their live shows. I did fortunately see them twice live, with basically this lineup intact. And like there's like a moment in the show basically where Dave gets behind the kit, Taylor comes up, sings a song, they do a cover song, they get fucking weird with it. They put out like a whole fucking EP of Bee Gees covers like last year or something like that.
Oh my God, I forgot they did that.
And they called themselves the DGs, like just some they're on some, like, we've been around for 3 decades.
We can do whatever the fuck
we can
just
want to do what we want. We can make a horror comedy movie, which is way too violent for what our fans are probably expecting out of this film. We'll get into that. But, like, fuck it, man. Like, we're just going to have fun and do whatever the hell, like, makes us happy. And, hopefully it makes their fans happy and stuff, too. But, like, it really... They're not a band to me that's about being crowd-pleasing. They're, a band that's about having fun and making sure that their fans are able to see that and experience that with them. So I think that's really kind of true to their core of like who they are as people and as musicians. So with all that said, obviously we should turn our attention to Taylor Hawkins, who I mean, had been with the band for 2 decades. Basically passed away late March, age 50 years old.
Young.
Very, very young. Really, really awful. I mean, I don't think there's any real great way to tackle a subject like this. I mean, it's a really, really awful set of circumstances for everyone involved.
Yeah, and I mean, I think for people who don't know the details, which I don't know how you couldn't, but they were on tour. They were supposed to perform. This wasn't the Lollapalooza one, right? They had already done that, or they were going to do that later. But
so it was a festival in Colombia. Okay. I don't know exactly what it's called. They were
also doing the international Lollapalooza. I think they were supposed to do like the same weekend or something. But basically, reports are that that someone at the hotel was having chest pain, and they did the equivalent of calling 911, getting an ambulance, and were unable to revive him once they arrived. So there hasn't been a cause of death. I think there was a lot of speculation because 20 years ago now, when they were in London, also touring, he had an accidental overdose and was in a coma for 2 weeks.
Man.
And they talk about it pretty extensively in Back and Forth, and Dave talks about, thinking, basically the idea of having to go through another loss after, Kurt's death, and
it's brutal.
And kind of the aftermath of Taylor coming out of the coma and them kind of trying to all heal from this trauma, and how kind of the way they were each coping with it left kind of a rift. It almost broke up the band. And then they were able to just go to a house in Virginia and re-record the album, and came out of it stronger, and made some great music, and then continued as a band for a couple more decades. But I think because of that history, there was speculation, just because of Taylor's kind of past struggles with drugs, and he was, I think, not super acknowledging the addiction, more just partied too hard, that kind of thing. And so I think there's just been some speculation, not helped by the fact that the Colombian government has put out his talk screen, which I'm not really sure why that needed to be public knowledge. It didn't sound like it wasn't released by the family. It wasn't released by the band. It was released by the Colombian government. And which just feels really weird to me. And, he had, different things in his system, but it doesn't say anything about amounts. So it could just be as simple as like he was taking his medication as prescribed. And, who knows?
They just release that shit naturally. Everybody just
right. And
jump to conclusions. Basically.
Exactly. So it's was kind of to me an inappropriate thing for the government to do. But I think more important than speculation about the cause of death is just the tragedy that this was for his friends and his family and his bandmates. As seen, in Back and Forth and in Studio 66, like these guys are 66. Oh my God. These guys are really close. Their families are really close. They've been, together as a band for so long, and they've been friends for so long, and, their kids have probably grown up together, and it's really devastating. It's just a devastating loss. And, I think we weren't surprised that they canceled all of their tour dates.
Yeah,
it's understandable, having that.
How do you move on like that, that close to something like this happening?
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's.
And after 3 decades, do you think Foo sticks together?
Hard to say.
That's it's something we've talked about.
I'm sure they don't even know.
I'm sure they don't. There's this kind of.
Or after 3 decades, that is Foo, and now a piece of Foo is missing. You know what I mean?
Right. At the end of Back and Forth, Dave said something about like Foo Fighters isn't just me. It's me, and it's Taylor, and it's Pat, and it's Chris, and it's Nate. Like
once upon a time, it was Dave and Dave and now doing everything, but it morphed into a group
collaborative
of people.
And I think it was in that he talks about how like the first thing they do is that he and Taylor like figure out the drums and guitar for every song, for every track.
Yeah, that's brutal. I don't.
To not have that, this your best friend really.
He describes him as basically his brother in that documentary, and I feel like they really, those two particularly had the closest bonds probably of anyone in the band. As far as obviously we know as just people kind of looking in, but yeah, there's never any easy way to have to deal with something like this, even if it's as simple as someone quitting the band and like leaving, and you're like, oh shit, I got to find someone to replace them. Like it's going to change things, but for them to be kind of rooted in decades of doing things a certain way and having this sort of relationship and camaraderie, it's an understandable question to think, how does Foo function moving forward? Do they function moving forward? Do they? Dave Grohl will probably still always make music, but Dave Grohl is Dave Grohl. He can make music on his own. He's done it before. Is that something that's completely distinct from Foo at this point? Because Foo is not just him anymore.
Right.
I don't know. I think time will tell. Obviously, is really the only answer that we can gather about that. They've been pretty silent all around, which is more than understandable. Yeah. They basically put out the release confirming his death, and since then just confirming the cancellation of all tour dates, which and other than that, we've really haven't heard anything from anyone in the band, and and it's so close to it. Everyone I'm sure is just hurting and grieving, and learning how to process something like this kind of coming out of nowhere for everyone.
And even though the band's been quiet, I think just like the public basically has not. I think one of the things about Taylor is he was just well loved by everybody. There was nobody. It doesn't seem to be anybody who didn't like him. Even like in the documentary, Nate talks about how he was like worried he was gonna hate him because he was the surfer or whatever, and like obviously loved him. And so I think it's been kind of touching to see all these tributes from all different musicians, and like I think Jill Biden wrote something. It's just again this like kind of broad appeal, and so many people have this love and appreciation of Foo Fighters and of Taylor, and I think it would be fitting to note also that at the Grammys, which were just a few days ago, there were a couple tributes, really. He's part of the In Memoriam.
And they had, I mean, I think kind of a more extended tribute toward him, even preceding that.
And Billie Eilish wore a shirt with him on it, and you know, and then they won a bunch of Grammys,
3 fucking Grammys,
for this last album that came out.
Yeah. I think
best rock album, best
rock album, best rock song, best rock performance.
Yeah.
So man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
15 Grammys for their career, just to keep tally on that as well, which
it's incredible.
Like I read somewhere as like the most for any one band, but maybe
yeah. I mean, they're just, you know, I mean, at the very end of Back and Forth, you know, Taylor says something like, "I'm not a fucking rock star, I'm a musician." And
it's true.
I mean, this just, you know, kind of shows that appreciation for it. And yeah, it's just, you know, it's tragic all around. It's heartbreaking that, you know, this kind of talent, this just so beloved person is gone so young. And then of course, you know, for his family and his friends and, you know, and also for like them, you know, kind of selfishly for fans who don't get to experience his performances and his talent and any future music that he would have made. It's, you know, it's very sad. But
it is. Yeah.
Has given us a nice opportunity to, you know, appreciate this band and these guys.
Celebrate him,
more.
Celebrate the band, celebrate their music together, you know, and honor kind of what he did, you know, what he lived in, you know, and loved doing.
Yeah.
You know, you see it, you hear it, you feel it, you know, pretty much whether it's listening to a Foo album or it's watching a documentary, you know, where you see them making the music together or when they're making a weird horror comedy thing,
movie,
you know, like,
which I will say there were, it was not my speed. There were things I enjoyed about it, but I think the number one thing I enjoyed about it was a line by Taylor, which was just delivered beautifully. It was great. You know, I think honestly, like the best thing about the movie was also the best thing about the documentary was just seeing like it's like this group of friends just like doing dumb shit and hanging out together and loving each other. You know, I think that was just the big standout. So I'm going to leave you guys to talk about the specifics.
Okay.
Because
do you have any other thoughts on Back and Forth, the documentary?
Highly recommend. It's great. It's not super long. It's really interesting and engaging, and I think gives an even greater appreciation for the band, for their music videos, for each of these guys, and is a nice look at, you know, the life of Taylor Hawkins. So highly recommend. Studio 666, I probably recommend less unless you're cool with like a lot of gore and grossness. But definitely worth watching both, I think, given kind of the aftermath of Taylor's death.
Yeah. Well, thanks for hanging out with us for a little while.
Yeah.
Talking about Foo Fighters, talking about Taylor Hawkins, talking about Back and Forth in Studio 666 just a little bit. So I'm
going to go ahead and sign off with Eat a Bag of Dicks, Smear.
It's a line from Studio 666. You better watch it. If you're listening to this, hopefully you've watched it. We're gonna
talk about it.
Yeah, I think now is a good time. Unless you have any other things to talk about on your end, Andrew. Maybe you want to get into talking about Studio 666.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
All right, let's talk about it. I should say Back and Forth. I own it on Blu-ray. It's a 2011 documentary directed by James Mall. You can find it on Amazon. Actually, I've heard that people can, like, I think you can find it on YouTube in subpar quality if you could stomach such an awful thing.
Yeah.
But
we will not be watching it that way.
I think you can also rent it on Amazon for a few bucks, and it's definitely worth your time. I highly, highly recommend. But Studio 666 is available to rent as well. Currently on video on demand only. I think it's coming to Blu-ray sometime soon. I don't know if there's an official date on it, but you can watch it at home, just chucking a few bucks at the screen. The story was crafted by Dave Grohl himself, and then it was turned into a screenplay written by Jeff Bueller and Rebecca Hughes, directed by B.J. McDonnell. It stars, who else? The Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl, Taylor Hawkins, Nate Mendel, Pat Smear, Chris Shiflett, Rami Jaffe, and then there's some celebs that also hang out and have some fun with them. Whitney Cummings, Leslie Grossman, Will Forte, Jenna Ortega, and Jeff Garlin. So Studio 666, it's about the legendary rock band Foo Fighters, who move into an Encino mansion steeped in grisly rock and roll history to record their much-anticipated 10th album. And we should say, the 10th album, Medicine at Midnight, is very different from the 10th album that they're recording in Studio 666. But I will say, as a sort of, I guess, a mid-episode fun fact, the fictional band in Studio 666, Dream Widow, the absolute madman Dave Grohl recorded a whole metal album as Dream Widow, and it is out to listen to. It's like 40 minutes long, and it's pure fucking metal. It's great.
It is. I looked up Foo Fighters. I said, I looked up Foo Fighters on the Apple Music, and it says Dream Widow. Is this an actual band? And I clicked on it. It was some hard metal. I didn't.
Yeah, it's not Foo Fighters doing metal. It's Dave Grohl, and I think Rami Jaffe plays keys on it as well. It's Dave Grohl like throwing out just like a whatever. I'm Dave Grohl. I can do whatever the fuck I want. I'm just gonna make a 40-minute fucking tribute to metal and shit. You know, it's great. I mean, it's got a lot of elements of thrash metal, but it's got other kind of subgenres of metal kind of blended in there as well, and it ends with the 10-minute like instrumental track, which is kind of the crux of what they're recording in Studio 666. It's a longer version of the movie,
song.
But yeah, basically. So, yeah,
it's hilarious.
So I don't really think we need to do this like in a traditional non-spoiler recommendation, spoilers kind of thing. Why don't we just do a quick recommendation, and then we'll just do a full spoiler deep dive and talk about it. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, I think it's a very specific kind of thing. Like, if you're a Foo Fighters fan, you'll enjoy this. I think that probably goes without saying. You'll enjoy it for being able to see the band, and obviously now you have the added context of being able to see
one of them's
Taylor
not with us anymore.
Just kind of having fun with the rest of the gang. Like that's kind of it's nice to see. It makes you feel a little bit better. It makes you feel sad too, but it's nice to see that. Nice to see just the way that these guys clearly had this bond with each other. And I think that even though none of them are particularly fantastic actors, they're having fun. That's okay. And then. I think, putting aside any sort of Foo fandom, if you will, yeah, I mean, it's not an amazing film, but it's gory, it's bloody, if you like some sort of goriness and, if you like that sort of thing, like this will appeal to you on that standpoint. The comedy, I think, works fairly well overall, but it's kind of sporadic, it's a tonally weird kind of film that's kind of all over the place, where it's like, one scene's very jokey and one scene is not. It's a fun kind of mishmash of horror and comedy as genres. But it's got pacing problems. It's got it's not a perfect film or anything like that. But I do think it's a lot of fun, and I think that if it's the sort of thing that if you watch the trailer and think this could be fun for me, you'll probably have fun with it. Otherwise, probably not.
You probably
kind of how I feel about it. I'm not going to recommend this to just anyone. In terms of like our pure ranking scheme, I'd say it's somewhere hovering around yes and totally fine as like a film. But I as a Foo Fighters fan, I had a very yes time with it.
That's right.
Sense.
It's wildly hilarious. So as we discussed, I have not been a die-hard Foo Fighters fan, right? Like I'm not, but I am familiar with the bandmates and the people involved, and I do appreciate their music and everything else. And when I heard about Taylor's passing, it was a push to watch the movie. So
you actually watched this first before.
That's right.
I even thought about it. Yeah.
And I kind of like these things in general. Like I was all about Tenacious D forever ago,
Yeah.
And so it's really cool. I think when you get really creative people on a project that in a medium in which they normally don't make things, right?
Sure. Right.
And naturally, playing in a band, usually you're close with those people that you make music with, and usually, you get together and you have a good time, and that's exactly what this is. They wrote something up. They're like, "Fuck it, let's make a movie. Let's do it. It's going to be fun," and they're having a really good time, like you said, right? So I actually think it's the jokes and stuff land. Like I thought it was well written. I laughed a lot during this movie.
As did I. Yeah,
it's stupid. These things that happen are stupid. It's definitely got its own particular kind of humor, but not to its detriment. I think if this is who wrote this? Did Dave Grohl write this?
He did the story for it, and I think the conception of it was basically they actually, if I'm not mistaken, recorded the actual 10th album in the house that they filmed all this in.
Nice.
So basically, I guess, they had some weird moments and kind of creepy things that happened while they were staying there recording. And that gave Dave this idea to be like, let's make a fucking movie out of this. And, when it's
and they just did it.
And so I think it started as that, and then it, got spun out into, all right, well, we're going to have a thing about this band that was, murdered at this house however many years ago, and then it's going to happen again with demonic possession and what, I don't think anyone was possessed by a demon during the recording of Medicine at Midnight, as far as I'm aware. But clearly there was some occurrences that inspired Dave to kind of, I think, have this story, and then I guess he probably recruited some people to all right, I'm not a screenwriter. I know my limits. I can write lyrics, but I cannot write a screenplay. So I'll get some people to help out with that, and then we'll have fun doing it.
It's pretty great.
I think that's kind of how it played out. Yeah.
I think this, like you said, if you just watch the trailer, and if you think it's something that you would enjoy, then you probably will, because it's accurate representation of what the film is. I do think that this is I think it's a totally fine movie. It doesn't blow my socks off, but it's a real good time. And
totally fine is totally okay sometimes.
Yeah, it's totally fine. It's good. I mean, there's nothing. I had fun with it.
No one's walking in the door with high expectations, I think, either. And I think that can help, as well as you're in for a silly time with people, like I said, who aren't actors, but you could tell they're going to have fun on screen. And then you throw in some murder and some blood and guts and intestines and all that good stuff. Chainsaws.
Yeah, and it's like the perfect genre for them to have fun with, right? Like it's totally great. You get the guy, the delivery driver, who just who ends up splayed out across the woods.
Yeah. Well, we could say we're just in spoilers at this point for anyone that does care about that sort of thing. It doesn't matter. The delivery driver. I mean, I think as soon as the guy shows up, everyone thinks, "Oh, this guy's definitely dying." But yeah, I mean, that was pretty fucking gnarly. There were some gnarly ass kills. Maybe we should just start that.
Just so funny.
Start right there.
I don't care that there's this dead guy with his intestines hanging out over here in the trees. Okay, we need to finish this album. Let's get back
calling
inside.
the fucking cops.
And we're just like, oh, okay, let's just do it,
right, Dave.
And then the deaths were hilarious.
You could tell that they had fun creating, clever ways for everyone to get murdered in some grisly fashion. Even it sets the tone right away, because it has that flashback that it starts with, and this girl's crawling and her fucking leg is sticking out, bone sticking out of her leg. And I'm like, oh shit, what's going on? She gets a hammer to the fucking head. I'm like, all right. And I think
it's pretty brutal.
I feel like her head just gets fucking smashed. It's like it's gnarly right off the bat, and it's like, oh, this is that kind of movie. Okay. All right, I don't know if I was ready for this. I don't think Anna was ready for it, hence her not being with us anymore, to be honest. But she still had fun.
Yeah, that makes it more hilarious.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of the band members themselves, why don't we go through it? Why don't we go one by one? Well, Dave survives to the end. unlike everyone else in the film, effectively.
Vomits a lot.
It does vomit a lot. There's a lot of grossed out stuff like that too, which I thought was fine.
It's a shit ton of meat. He's always eating meat.
some solid Evil Dead vibes I felt like here and there.
Yeah, for sure.
And honestly, some of the kind of the same sort of early Sam Raimi schlocky sensibilities. You know what I mean? Where it's it's not full blown horror, and maybe even closer to like an Evil Dead 2 or an Army of Darkness, where it's like you're getting some weird, gross, horror-y shit in there, but like it's also kind of funny and intentionally campy in many ways, which is fun. You know, if you can hit that balance, if you can find the right tone for it, it works. And I think it works most of the time here. But the kills were pretty good. It's obviously a little odd, you know, in retrospect, but Taylor does die in this film. You know, with
like the most
symbol,
logical way,
symbol to
right?
the head. Yeah. Play the fucking drums, you know. You know, you knew it was coming. And you know, it's one of those. It's like, that's hard. It's hard to watch, but you know, perfectly creative for
decapitated by symbol. I mean, that's a good way for whether it's probably, I think it's crash. It is a crash. It's a big symbol.
Yeah, but, I think so. Yeah.
Anyways,
I think it might be the crash.
He totally decapitated with the fucking with a piece of his drum set.
Poor Nate. Nate. It's funny because I really thought for a while Nate and Pat were going to make it out alive.
Yeah,
and the film keeps going for a little bit, you know. And I was like, all right, you know, it's going to end up with kind of like more or less the original three of Dave, Nate, and Pat. But then it doesn't. And then it doesn't do that. So what happens with Nate? He gets stabbed through the eye in the van, right? And
Pat's underneath trying to do something to start
Pat. Yeah,
Pat's trying to
jumpstart the van.
So he's like shoving this wire through the van. I'm not quite sure what he's doing.
I don't either. I don't know what's going on either. But you know,
all of a sudden, out of the vent or whatever comes that wire and it stabs him in the eye. He's screaming. And then he runs him over.
Explodes his head. So Pat's heads explode. His head explodes from getting run over.
And it's the best because they're all not the best actors in this thing, you know. So when he gets out of it, he's like, "Oh God, Pat, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I exploded your head."
And some of the effects too are like some are pretty good, and then some are like, "Oh, that's just a watermelon," you know, like kind of thing, like getting run over, kind of like level of effects, which is like fine, you know, again for like certain aspects of it. Chris. I mean, I think he might have been. Well, I don't know. Chris and Rami. I felt like those deaths were fucking personal.
With
Chris is the one. He's a guitarist. He gets the face melted on the grill. And then gets eaten.
Right.
Pretty brutal. And then Rami's the classic. You know, it's a horror movie, so we got to have people having sex and then getting killed while having sex. So they get chainsawed in half together. I think that one might be the most iconic kill.
I think for sure
in the whole best film, because it's a dual killing with a chainsaw right down the middle. What's Dave doing under the bed? I guess he knew what was about to happen. He knew what was about to go down.
He starts that chainsaw. Like it takes a couple yanks of the chainsaw to start it. Nobody pays attention because they're going at it.
Yeah.
And like nobody knows. And what's his face is wearing that he goes to wake him up and he goes to wake him up.
Banana hammock on.
It's tiger banana hammock. Are those mine? That's good. That's funny. He's all out on the bed. It's good. I thought it was funny too. I liked his character a lot too, talking about energies and with the feather.
Yeah. He was very funny. I do wonder how much of like everyone's own personality like seeped into it a little bit, you know, because like they're like hyper realized versions of themselves. I think to a certain extent. Like I don't doubt that "eat a bag of dicks" smear is probably something that gets exchanged on the regular. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure that they all give each other shit all the time and say these sorts of things, but like something like Pat's like sleeping in the fucking kitchen on the island. And he's just like, oh yeah, it's fine. There was
he probably has a reputation of just like falling asleep everywhere.
Yeah, right. Is he just falling asleep everywhere? So they just playing off these sorts of like aspects. Like is Rami like a fucking weirdo and like they're always talking about this sort of shit. And they're like, what are you talking about, dude? So they just played on that. I don't know. But either way, it made for very, 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 very funny stuff. For me, the thing that I like most about this, and this is true, like for Foo Fighters, like if you've watched a lot of their music videos, particularly I think like album 3 on, like they have fun with it. Like they're dressing up in drag, they're like, like getting in character, and like it's all very silly and like play fun kind of thing. It's not just I'm gonna be in a fucking warehouse playing fucking rock and roll, man. Like it's not really about that. I mean, I'm sure they have some videos that are closer to that, but a lot of, especially those early days ones, were like, I don't know, we're doing stupid shit together, and this is just like a perfect extension of that. But on top of that, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of us. It reminds me of us. This felt like if you gave Andrew and myself $3 million to make some fucking stupid movie, this is what we would do.
We would definitely
this is exactly what we would do. And I'm not saying that
same
we would
genre, same everything.
Yeah, it wouldn't be quality content necessarily, but for people that like us and enjoy maybe our style of humor, they would probably find some entertainment value in it, being like, these motherfuckers just spent $3 million making their own fucking,
good for them.
Personal short film.
Good for them.
Usually we're not working off a $3 million budget, but if we were, then we'd be like, yeah, we're gonna do some Evil Dead shit here. I want to see someone get chainsawed in half, and I want it. Like we couldn't do that when we're making fucking movies when we're fucking 12, 13 years old. Like we can't do that. We can't chainsaw anyone in half. But we got $3 million. We can hire people that know how to do that sort of thing.
All sorts of stuff.
So I really enjoyed just the fun sort of like home video-esque kind of like having fun, just doing shit that you think is cool or funny or like, like I think about for anyone that hasn't seen it, they should check out our short film called For Momma, which is available on YouTube. If you mind the interwebs for it, that one to me especially, that it's just like I feel like we shot it in sequence, and like everything we did was just like, well, what if this happened? Well, what if we do this next? What if we do that next? And this film to me was very much like, even if it was just Dave just being like, oh, and then they find this fucking book, and it's like that book from Evil Dead, and then he gets fucking possessed. Right. And then he fucking starts killing everyone in the band.
He's got to make this song to open up the gateway to hell.
Yeah, it's and this is absolutely very much Tenacious D, Pick of Destiny type of territory, right? To a certain extent. I mean, I think that one is tonally a bit different, but the same sort of thing of just being like, it's fucking Jack Black, who is, to be fair, actually just an actor in general. Probably first and foremost, maybe before being a musician. So that
I don't know. He's pretty talented. He's a pretty talented musician.
Right, but did he start as an actor or did he start as a musician?
I'm sure he started as an actor.
I feel like he started as an actor and then, Tenacious D
right.
probably became more popular because of his clout as an actor. But obviously he's still a very talented musician as well. But that probably helps is having an actor, kind of being one of your main anchors. Here you don't really have that. You've got some celebrity cameos and stuff like that. But that doesn't really change that in a certain sort of way.
Holy shit. Did we talk about the Lionel Richie?
We did not. Is that
Oh,
I think we talked about it off air.
I think that's my favorite.
But it might be the funniest moment, and just like maybe the best use of just a fucking random cameo out of nowhere.
He's trying to channel his songwriting. He's trying to write the song. He's playing. He's got this. It's dimly lit. He's got a couple of scotches in him, and he's just playing a Lionel Richie song. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, fucking Lionel Richie. That's my song. God damn it! Quit playing my fucking song.
That's my fucking song. And it's like within like 5 to 10 minutes of like, oh, I got this killer riff, guys. boom, 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 boom. You know, like that's just all my life, dude. You wrote that like fucking 15 years ago. I was like, oh shit. You know, that was great. You know, I've seen some complaints online that are like, I wish this had more like Foo stuff in it. You know, like there's no Foo Fighters music that really gets played, I guess technically aside from the Dream Widow stuff, until the credits. But like, I don't know, like it still felt pretty quintessentially Foo to me without having, you know, you got the guitar riffs as part of the jokes. You got Whitney Cummings doing her best of you over the fence. Her also slowly slinking like down behind the fence was excellent as well. Just
that was pretty
slowly
good.
Disappearing. That was very good. You know, but I think that like I don't know, it all kind of I like horror. I like Evil Dead. I like
schlocky horror
shit. You know, like this is the kind of thing that I think probably appeals to me anyway. So it really does to me feel like, all right, you're gonna do this silly fucking thing, like fine. The gore doesn't bother me.
It's like this with all genres, right?
Yeah.
It's either incredibly artistic and it's incredibly good, or it's self-aware and it's well written enough, it's self-aware and it's fun.
It's entertaining enough that, you know, you're in.
They're different ends of it's weird. So it's kind of like an upside down parabola or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Where like both ends are excellent. Super schlocky or super artistic and well made. The ones that are the worst are the ones that are like in the middle, right? Like where they're not self-aware enough, but they're not very good. And they're not fun, you know, they're poorly made, poorly executed. And this is definitely at the other end of the spectrum. But I think in order to appreciate that, you have to know what you're getting into, and you have to appreciate the genre that it's in, which is horror. And you know, because it's campy, right? You have to appreciate what makes it campy in order to have a good time with it. But I haven't watched a movie like this in a long time, and I was happy that I did.
Yeah, I had a blast with it. You know, it's maybe this is a similar experience for you, but like this is not a film. This is not the type of film that our significant others watch on the regular. And you might. I'm sure you watched it alone. To be fair,
I watched this alone.
But you know, even just having Anna be able to watch with us, because you know we're kind of like just absorbing all the Foo stuff that we can. Like, it was nice to just step back into this genre. You know, I think the last horror film that I'd seen, and it was a straight horror film, although honestly probably just as funny in terms of how bad it was Halloween Kills. And that was not good. It was not good. It was, I mean, this was infinitely better than fucking Halloween Kills. I'll tell you that.
Was this one of those, was Halloween Kills one of those movies that wasn't self-aware, was just poorly executed and
it was a hot
garbage
yeah. I mean, yeah, they fucked that one. Well, I guess I'll just leave it at that. But, man, it was just nice. I'll say that. It was nice to just enjoy some gory, like over the top shit and have a few laughs along the way, you know, like just really veering between like, oh God, oh that's pretty fucking gross, or you know, and for me, honestly, a lot of it is like laughing at how like fucking over the top some of the kills are. Like the chainsaw one particularly, like yeah, that's off-putting to some people. For me, it was pretty funny, you know, just all of it kind of coming together there. You know, like the only response that I could conjure was to just fucking laugh, you know. So
yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. That actually might be kind of it for Studio 666. I mean, it's not a terribly deep film. You know, obviously, it's a bunch of dudes having fun and making a schlocky horror film, and like that's cool. That's fun. I like that. I like it even more because it's Foo Fighters, or you know, they're the group of guys doing that. But
yeah,
it went on a little too long. I didn't need the whole producer coming back at the end and having
he was the one in it all along. Yeah,
you know, like at a certain point, I was, you know, I was like, all right, I've had my 90 minutes of fun. I didn't need the extra 10 to 15 minutes tacked on top of that, but that's okay. That's okay. It's not going to hold back my enjoyment of the film. So yeah, any other thoughts on Studio 666 for you?
No, that's it, man.
All right. Well, it's a bonus episode and all, so I don't really think we have a whole lot of other stuff to hit on. I don't think we have any listeners' corner or catching up to do since we recorded our last regular episode very, very recently. But the only thing I guess I'll ask you, maybe just to round everything out, is what are some of your favorite Foo Fighters songs? I'm not going to ask you for a favorite album. I think that's an unfair question based on our conversation earlier. But like, what tracks up there for Foo Fighters songs for you? I'm just curious what your taste is.
Okay, so I really, really, really like All My Life. I've always really, 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 really like that song. I think that one's probably got to be my favorite. Okay. It's just that it's awesome. And in the way that it's just the way the song's composed. It's really cool.
No, it's very good.
I also like Everlong.
Yeah, I mean,
Everlong's a really, really, really good one. Let me get there. Those two are the ones.
Pull up the singles, man. And there's a lot.
Foo Fighters. Let's see what we got. So, The Pretender's a really good one too. Yep. Monkey Wrench. Shit, I forgot about Monkey Wrench.
Yep.
So I'm going to say All My Life, Everlong. And you could give me the acoustic version of Everlong or the original. I think both of those are really great.
Okay.
The Pretender's really great too. And Monkey Wrench. Those are they have a whole Times Like These. Oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah.
Times Like
These. You just keep going down the list. You're like, fuck. That's not, fuck. That one, fuck.
These are all singles though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Times Like These is definitely a single.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna run down it. I don't know how much of the early stuff you know. Do you know really anything from the first album? So This Is a Call, I'll Stick Around, or For All the Cows, Big Me. Any of those ring a bells for you? I'm sure you could probably recognize some of those songs, maybe not from the name. But then you're getting into The Color and the Shape, second album, Monkey Wrench, Everlong, My Hero. I know you know all three of those.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. That's a good album.
Yeah, I think a lot of people consider that their best album. I think it's definitely at least in the top 2 or 3. I have some other albums that I'm like huge fans of, but I can totally vibe with that. The third album, There's Nothing Left to Lose. Here's another one we haven't talked about. Learn to Fly. That's a fucking classic.
How's that one go? Learn to Fly. Well, hold on a second.
Look, I don't know if I should sing. I feel like people wouldn't appreciate.
Oh yeah, okay, I know that song.
But yeah.
Learn to Fly is a classic.
Looking to the sky to save me. Looking for a sign of life.
Yep. Good.
So
one.
That's a classic. Also up that same album, I think some lesser known songs. I think Stacked Actors, Generator, Breakout. And then one by one, you get into All My Life, Times Like These. That's a fucking great song.
Times Like These is really, really, really good.
And Your Honor, Best of You. I know you know that song.
Yeah,
the best. DOA is a good one off there too. Resolve as well. Pretender off of Echoes, Silence, Patience, and Grace. Long Road to Ruin. I bet there's some of these you would know just from that. I wouldn't be surprised if actually probably once you get into 2011's Wasting Light onward, there's probably songs you don't recognize as much because you're probably not listening to the radio in the same way, right? You know what I mean? As you are when you grow up.
I'm not listening to the radio hardly at all anymore,
right.
Really.
So there's some really good ones off there. Walk is a good one. It was prominently featured in Thor, the 2011 film as well. So you probably would have heard it there because you've probably seen that film at least once or twice. Rope's a good one. Sonic Highways, but actually Sonic Highways is actually a really fucking cool project that Foo Fighters did. So they did an HBO miniseries, 8 episodes, in which every episode they went to a recording studio in like a different city in America, and they recorded a song there, and like they wrote the lyrics based off of like the music history of the city.
That's really cool. That's a whole album?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a concept album in terms of how they approached it and recorded it. I thought it was really cool. It's not their best work, but I think it's really cool, and the miniseries is actually really cool too. I also have that on Blu-ray, so I'd like to watch that at some point, but that's a little bit more of an investment of time, 8 episodes, but I really like Sonic Highways. But again, not a whole lot of like huge singles off there that are probably recognizable for you. I think there are some big singles, Something from Nothing being the biggest one. And
something from the...
I'm something from nothing.
I don't think I know that song.
Anyway,
maybe I do
know that song. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. Anyway, hope everyone enjoyed that rendition. Concrete and Gold was a 2017 album, I believe. Run's a big one off that. Sky's a Neighborhood. It's good stuff. And then Medicine at Midnight. I don't know if you've listened to the newest album, their 10th album. Shame was like the big single that they started with, and that was like a weird kind of stripped back, like slower, like really like drum heavy kind of song, like just like the beat is just really, really unique and like quiet for Foo Fighters, and it's very cool. It's a very, very catchy chorus and song.
Right.
So definitely a good one. But it's a really good. It's a really, really great album. The new one, Medicine at Midnight. It's got kind of like I don't know, dancey, disco-y kind of vibes overall. While still being like fucking rock and roll or whatever. So yeah. I think even just covering the time in which they started through like when we're like listening heavily to rock and to rock radio stations, like you've got a good solid probably 10, 15 tracks that you could probably see the name of that song and hear it in your head. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'd be willing to bet there's probably another 10 songs on here that you could play them and be like, I know this song. I've heard that song before. You don't know the lyrics, but you've heard that song. You've definitely heard that song. Like that's Foo Fighters.
They've been they've been around for most of my life.
They've been around for fucking decades. Like they're.
Yeah, so
they're almost as old as we are, really.
Exactly. With that being said, it's I know the big ones, but yeah, I'd probably go on a limb and say I would definitely 100% be able to identify the person playing the music at the very least.
Yeah, and you've seen Dave Grohl and other capacities as well. Queens of the Stone Age for a time.
That's the band that needs to make a movie. I would watch that movie. I like them.
Yeah, that would be good stuff. Obviously, Nirvana, as you, I guess, more recently discovered.
I didn't know Dave Grohl was Dave. I didn't know he was in Queens of Stone Age.
He Songs for the Deaf. He did the drums on that.
He did drums on. What an album to do drums on! Holy shit, for real!
Yeah,
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, one of the best Queens albums, and then. Them Crooked Vultures. He played on that as well.
Okay,
I believe he did the drums on that because I think that was also with Josh Homme and John Paul Jones. That was
one of those super bands
from Zeppelin. Yeah. He's a talented guy. So it remains to be seen. Obviously, the future of Foo Fighters, but hopefully, if nothing else, even if the band can't find a way to move on from obviously a loss of a critical member. I think as much as it would suck to see Foo Fighters end after decades of success,
I would understand.
You wouldn't be mad about it, right? You just kind of feel, that loss, and we'll see what happens, I guess. Overall, I'm glad that if nothing else, if it comes down to it, we've had 3 decades worth of incredible material. You've got 10 albums to go back and listen to. And I've been doing a lot of that over the past couple of weeks. I bought Wasting Light on vinyl as well. Wasting Light it's their 7th album. It's maybe my favorite album that they've done. They recorded the whole thing like analog, like with tapes and shit. And basically there wasn't room for them to digitally correct mistakes and all that, so they had to be like perfect, with each individual take. And it was just a really, really cool recording process, and I think it made for a really like raw album. And it was recorded in like Dave's fucking garage, some just is awesome. Anyway, Back and Forth touches on that. Back and Forth basically leads into the recording of Wasting Light, and that's kind of where it ends, is like them having recorded that album. So yeah, I mean, go listen to Foo Fighters. Almost certainly everyone's got Apple Music, Spotify, shit, just use YouTube, whatever it is. Listen to some Foo Fighters, celebrate their music, celebrate the legacy of Taylor Hawkins and his contributions to Foo Fighters. And you know what? Taylor Hawkins also had a side project, and I admittedly never listened to them, but Taylor Hawkins and the Coattail Riders, they put out 3 albums from what I'm reading. He was also apparently in a supergroup called NHC with some people from Jane's Addiction.
Okay.
Where he sang and played drums. And so, he was just a prolific musician who put his all into everything that he did, and I think it showed in all of his products. Certainly the ones that I've been exposed to, but I know a lot of people are big fans of obviously his own work too. To the point where like I talked about, like he's coming out and singing a song, while Dave plays drums. Like that's fun, But it's like I think it's a credit to his musicianship that a lot of these guys are just multi-talented and multi-dimensional musicians. It's just really cool. So yeah. Anyway, fucking Foo Fighters, man. Check it out. Check out their music. Check out Back and Forth. Check out Studio 666. Check out Taylor.
Relish in the
stuff.
Foo.
Just embrace it like we did. This is a bonus episode. It wasn't like I think once upon a time we saw the trailer for Studio 666 and be like, oh, that would be fun. We obviously didn't cover it when it came out, but circumstances being what they were, it just felt like a really, really cool thing to do and just kind of envelop ourselves in this world for just a little bit. And so I think we've done that, and hopefully it's inspiring some others to
it was nostalgic as well. It was a good trip down.
Yeah.
It was a good trip down. Definitely. Almost like you said, it reminded both of us of our childhood a little bit. And,
definitely.
Felt good.
We're all coming at it from different angles. You, Anna, and myself all have different experiences with Foo Fighters. There's definitely, people that might be listening that have even more passion for their music. You have been with them since 1994, or they've been with them since fucking 2017, but they've listened to all the old albums more times than I have, and that's great, But I think that they do have a broad appeal. That's what Anna talked about. They have a broad reach. And I think they've impacted people in really discernible ways. And for me, I love Foo Fighters. It's probably the last thing I can say about them. And I hope that they find a way to continue and make music, because I would love nothing more than to hear, more music from them. But people, you gotta respect people, and you gotta respect their lives, and they got to do what's best for them, and any decisions that Dave and company make, I'm gonna respect the shit out of it, because
they've given so much already.
There's no right way to respond to anything that happens in your life, So you got to respond how you feel is appropriate. So we'll see what happens. And if nothing else, decades of great fucking music as your legacy, like Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We also talked about that. 15 Grammy Awards, 10 albums. Like that's something, So any other thoughts for you? You want to wrap it up for this bonus episode here?
That's it for me, man.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, please spread the word. Patreon, we didn't really do the whole thing in the beginning. This is not like super well planned out bonus episode or anything like that, but basically this will have been sitting on Patreon for a little bit of time before it comes out as a regular episode. So anyone that did listen to this early by supporting us on Patreon, thank you. I'll say that here. Thank you. But for those of you who are listening to this on the regular feed right now, all of our bonus episodes that we do are available on a timed exclusive basis on Patreon at patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat. $2 a month gets you access to that. In addition to that, I think the bigger selling point, for us recently is you get early access to all of our regular episodes as well. And honestly, especially when we record 3-hour behemoths, those sit on the Patreon for a good amount of time as well before I have time to churn it out and edit them and get them up on the regular feed, all cleaned up and nice like. So support us on Patreon. It helps us out, by obviously putting money in our pockets, but we're using that money to pay for hosting costs for the website, for hosting the literal files of the podcast, and for upgrading our equipment and stuff like that. And we've had enough Patreon support. We've been fortunate in that regard to be able to do some of that. But more never hurts, and I think that we could definitely benefit from that. So and the idea being that it's not just solely for our benefit; it's a mutual exchange of goods for you guys, goods for us. That's the idea. So patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat for anyone interested. Otherwise, regular website is watchreviewrepeat.com. We're on basically all the social medias at this point. We're at WRR Pod on Twitter, Watch Review Repeat on Instagram. We have a page on Facebook. Just search for Watch Review Repeat. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for our next regular episode, which we'll touch on in just a minute, send those our way. watchreviewrepeat@gmail.com. If you've got some thoughts on anything we've covered recently, the Oscars, the Slap, Turning Red,
Slap.
or Foo Fighters, or Studio 666, or Taylor Hawkins, write in. Let's talk about it. Andrew and I will talk about what you send in, I guess. But, send us some thoughts. We'd be happy to engage with them. Our intro and outro track is Mechanolith by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. So what's going on for our next regular episode? Because to this point, it'll have been Academy Awards, Turning Red, and now this in sequence. We're going to be roughly in the middle of April by the time you're listening to this on the regular feed. I think we can just safely say at this point, we're just going to skip Morbius because, you know what?
Have you seen the memes?
Well, I've seen some memes. I don't know if I've seen the ones you've seen, but, it just comes a point in your life where you just, it's, once upon a time, if it's 2017, we're watching Inhumans and it's all fun and games, but, that's a young man's game at this point, is just intentionally watching dog shit. Driving yourself, for Andrew's case particularly, driving yourself to the fucking theater, probably 20 minutes out of the way, knowing that you're going to watch something that's going to be fucking dreadful, and paying money for it, even if it is indirectly through A-list, that's a bullshit, man. And I thought it's fun. Sometimes it's fun to do that. And it is. It's totally fun to just shit on something for an hour or two. I'm not going to dispute that. It's the everything that goes into the preparation for that feels like I cannot in good faith ask this man to do this for me. Now, if we thought Morbius was going to be decent and then it turned out to be a pile of shit, all right, fine. That's something different, That's expectations, But we know what we're getting. The Rotten Tomatoes scores are there. I'm sure they're not lying. I'm sure all of those critics are not conspiring to take down Sony's Marvel universe of characters or whatever the fuck, It's not anything like that. So I don't think we're going to do Morbius. You know what? We didn't do Venom 2, and I'm pretty sure we got along just fine. Would you concur with that? Having still not seen Venom for however long it's been out, it came out in September or October. You know what? And we survived. I don't think anyone wrote any mean letters bitching about us not covering Venom 2. We made it, and I think we'll be just fine not having to watch Jared Leto fucking be an insufferable asshole for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that I'm not going to see it, and I don't think you are either.
You're not out on a limb.
Are we going to talk about it probably every other episode still? Yeah, we will. But that doesn't mean we're going to see it. And I'm not going to say on the record it's definitely a bad film because I haven't seen it and I can't make that claim. But we're gonna talk about it and we're gonna make fun of it because, come on. Is what I would say about that. So where does that leave us? I think it leaves us with Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I think that's where it leaves us. You know what? And Andrew had a ton of fun with the first one. Me less so. But I'll say that I've enjoyed the trailers for this one. It feels more video gamey in a good way. You know, it feels like fucking Sonic and Tails and Knuckles and Dr. Eggman. I'm in. Is it going to be good? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not.
But it'll be fun.
I hope that I'll have fun with it, and more so in a way than I didn't really have that much fun with the first one. But I'm gonna walk in with an open mind, and we'll see what happens with Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So I think that's something that I can ask Andrew to make a theater trek for. I feel like he can manage it.
I will do it,
and we'll talk about it. So that's where we're gonna leave it then for this episode.
Y'all take care now.
Yeah.
Bye then. Oh, wait.
Laters. No, what?
Did I do it right? You got to do the mechanical and stuff?
No, I already did that.
Oh, okay. Take care now. Bye then.
Laters on the Menjay.